Today, we're going to talk about some of the challenges that this ministry has had. When we first had the political crisis in 2009, the end of June 2009, we ran into a situation in which the police officers who worked in our office had to be working on um, public security because there was a lot of violence and demonstrations throughout Honduras. And the colonel it made it more difficult for us to move around and attend victims, but we did continue working with victims. But one of the things that happens in Honduras is that they frequently move the police officers around and the colonels around from one post to another post. And in Talunga, this proved to be a difficult situation into the end of 2010, middle of 2010, I think it was probably July of 2010, the end of July, it was in 2011, in January of 2011, where they placed a colonel with us who was not a good guy. For security reasons, I can't really talk a great deal about what exactly happened. But this colonel did not like the work that we were doing. He did not like our presence in his police station. And he worked actively to sabotage the work that we did. Lying to victims, telling them we weren't present, trying to do things to move us out of the office that we were inside and put us out on the street. And we battled with that. In May of that year, the Lord told me that the office would be closed by the end of October. Basically, in prayer, the Lord said the office would be closed October 31st. At the time that I received that word, I thought I was getting warning that someone was going to try to do something to the office. I thought it was sort of wisdom to combat it. But as the year progressed and things happened, the aggression became more. Some of the good generals in Tegucigalpa had come and told him not to touch us, not to cause any problems with us, but things kept happening. And then I have to be very careful about the things that I share with you at this moment, because this is going to be out public. But they changed the colonels again, and there was another one who wasn't a good guy, and he was requiring me to fire my advocate that I had, who was doing a really good job. But what was happening was she was informing me all of this time of the corruption that was going on. As I said in the previous episodes, we had increased the number of reports from 30% to 90%. And prior, only 1% of the cases that were reported ever finished in the court, and we had a 71% clearance in the court. When you get to the 29%, the remaining cases that don't get solved have the following situations. One is you don't know who the perpetrator or the aggressor is. So if you don't know who it is, then you can't find them and arrest them. The other is you know who it is, but you don't know where he is. He's fled somewhere. Someone's hiding him. He's gone to the States or something. You just don't know where he is, so you can't get him. You have the arrest warrant, but you can't get him. And then the other cases are negligence and corruption. And when you're advocating for justice in a country that at the time was the murder capital of the world, it still is almost the murder capital of the world. It is the murder capital of the world for human rights advocates, specifically female human rights advocates. It is the murder capital of the world for journalists. And when you get to this point where you're advocating and you're pushing cases where people are being negligent or corrupt, then you make enemies. During the years that we worked with the office, in various cases we would have death threats on me specifically, not on my husband because he was a behind-the-scenes person, but specifically on me, by friends and family of the people who were being arrested for raping little girls and beating their wives and doing things like that. And it's interesting to think that somebody would blame me for a man who has sex with a 12-year-old, that it's my fault, he's going to prison. And so there were hundreds of death threats on me, and that's why I had the police with me. They acted as my bodyguards to keep me safe. My husband is a prayer warrior. He would pray me home alive every time I walked out the door. But we had a case, Gloria, she's allowed me to use her name. She was a victim of domestic violence. Her husband carved his name in her back twice to mark her, so no other man would have her and know that she was his possession. I'll tell you her story in one of these episodes. But he had threatened me. He was my first death threat from the jail cell as I'm walking into my office. Gringa, you're going to die for this. We had a couple cases, and in other episodes, I'll share the details of those cases and the amazing things that God has done. But I angered quite a few people who committed crimes, and so it was, it's just normal, everyday operations to have death threats. And 5 times to our knowledge, people were actually in action to assassinate me, but God saved me. One time with a dump truck. I'll tell you that story one of these days. And but things changed in 2011. In 2011, I had been going to superiors quite frequently over corruption and negligence of investigators. And they were getting angry with me because they were getting in trouble for not doing their jobs. An example of not doing the job, in one of the prior episodes, I said, a 12-year-old's been kidnapped by a guy for sex. And they tell the parents, when you know where she is, we'll go look for her. And they do nothing. They just take the report and toss the file on the desk. Or they try to make the family pay for the gas for their vehicle. Things like that. Victims who come from the mountains. I'll tell you that story another day, of the pregnant lady from Orica who came from the mountains, and they refused to take her police report. And so these are the things that were happening. We had a really difficult case in which my husband's coming in now, so maybe he'll say hello for a second. We had a difficult case in which a person was almost murdered, and I was working in the National Police Headquarters in Tagu for a week with the generals applying for grants to help combat violence. And he couldn't understand why the people in Talanga wouldn't do their job, and assigned me a team from Tegucigalpa in which we got the case done. And then he ordered me to write a report to him listing all of the cases that were not closed and why they were not closed. And in it, this report was a report that basically caused a great deal of trouble for me personally, in that it angered certain persons that I had put this report in. But basically the bottom line of what happened was an order was made from a person in the authorities, and I was informed of this by a general in Tegucigalpa who's a Christian man and a good man, that the next time that we went to the mountains to execute an arrest warrant, that there would be a shootout, and oops, the gringo would get one in the head. When it came to that point, and I saw that here in Talanga we didn't have support of the colonel here, then I realized that the word the Lord had given me in May was not that they were going to try to close the office, was that for security reasons we had to close the office. So on the 2nd of November 2011, we closed the victim's office in Talanga and brought all of our equipment here to the ministry. Since then, we've continued to work with police. We continue to work with investigators and police, judges and prosecutors on cases. And during this time, the Lord has been talking to me and my husband about when we will get back to work. And that time is coming soon. That time is actually now, which is why we're doing all of these videos. And in our next episode, I'm going to share with you what the Lord said about how we would reopen and restart this justice work and just all of the things that God has put into motion in the last year and a half, and what will be happening in the coming year. So we'll share that information with you next week.